Okay, so we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm your moderator, Chris, and we're happy you could join us for an evening with the Alzheimer Society. Before we start, I'd like to take the time to do a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of the lands we are on today. Though we meet virtually, it's essential to recognize the lands we call home. This reaffirms our commitment to improving relationships with Indigenous nations and understanding their cultures. Across the country, we honor the ancestral and unceded territories of Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples and strive for reconciliation and collaboration. As always, you can find us on social media. Give us a follow. We're always sharing new content, and feel free to check out our site, Help for Dementia, for new webinars and past webinars where you can check out the recordings. And just some general housekeeping. The meeting is being recorded, and we hope you brought lots of questions tonight. Feel free to raise your hand and unmute your microphone to ask a question, or you can add questions to the chat or message us directly in the chat, and we can share your question so it can be answered. As always, we like to remind you, this is not medical advice. And with that, I'd like to welcome Anne-Marie and Sarah, who are here to answer all your questions tonight.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
It's going to be so lovely to talk with you as a community tonight. Glad you're here.
So like Chris said, feel free to put questions in the chat or unmute yourself, raise your hand so we can identify if you have questions. And it's really ask anything. So you can really ask anything that pertains to navigating dementia care. So we do have a question in the chat. I'm worried about my mom's memory. How do I get a diagnosis? So when it comes to sorry. Did everyone hear my question though? Okay, perfect. Just the answer. So when it comes to diagnosing dementia, there's a few avenues depending on where you're at and what your situation is. If you're still in community or the person you're caring for is still community, maybe they're independent or living in independent or assisted living, a lot of times people get introduced to starting a diagnosis process to their family doctor if they have a good relationship, a trusting relationship. So sometimes a family doctor, if they're comfortable, will do a baseline testing either with their family nurse or the physician themselves. And then they'll make recommendations if we need further testing, or if they want to make a referral to specialized geriatrics or a neurocognitive specialist. So there's different types of specialties that can diagnose and do testing for dementia. Sometimes people end up in a hospital setting in crisis, or they came out of a surgery and people are worried about their memory. So sometimes a referral to specialized geriatrics right in the hospital if there's one available. And sometimes that's how they start the process because of something acute happened. There are specialty clinics. In central Alberta, currently there is, and actually around Alberta, we have a MINT memory clinic, which is ran by the primary care networks. And it's a multidisciplinary team. So it consists of a family physician, a pharmacist, a family nurse, and a mental health worker, which is typically a social worker or a psychologist. And they come together and they create a cohesive diagnosis of what's happening. So the first visit may be standard testing. Then we say, hey, there's a whole bunch of things that we want to change, right? Let's look at their medications, looks at like maybe their living area, right? Is there financial stress? Is there trauma going on? And we kind of see, okay, are there supports in the community? And then afterwards they say, hey, if we can work on these things, maybe next time we test them, there's some improvements, or not, we see some changes in their cognition, in their function, then we might say, okay, we can go ahead with the diagnosis process and naming what type of dementia or what type of memory concerns we're showing at this point and concerned about. So definitely a lot of different avenues. If you have any other follow questions, please call our main line to talk to a dementia navigator. But first point I would say is talk to your family doctor about what is the best avenue for getting a cognitive assessment. Marcy, I think we'll start with the hands up if that's
Sure.
okay, Marcy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question. My father is in the early stages and possibly advancing into the middle stages of dementia. And one of his biggest issues that he always talks about is how much he's inconveniencing people. He's not driving anymore, so he's always concerned about that. My mom has to drive him everywhere, and he's always so concerned about everybody having to go out of their way to help him. We always say, you know what, Dad, it's good. We're happy to help. Do you have any other strategies to help alleviate this concern of his that he has that he's burdening people? And I find it, I feel like it stresses him out a little bit.
Yeah, no, good question, Marcy. No, this is actually quite common. I work a lot of times with people who are getting diagnosed, and this is the first concern about how their family members are going to manage, and how they feel like all these changes, right? So there's that loss of sense of independence, right? And expectations they have upon themselves and how others take care of them. My recommendation is that, meeting him at his level, so acknowledging the feelings surrounding, like, hey, Dad, I understand this is hard. I understand you're feeling frustrated, reiterating that we're here as family, we're here to help you. How can we help you? What do you feel that you want to try? And sometimes just having that baseline conversation, whether it's one-on-one as a family meeting, to say, what does he feel he wants supports in, whether that's coming from family members or accessing supports in the community. But the first level is kind of matching and being like, no, you're not a burden. But if he's having those feelings, be like, I can understand that, how you can feel like, that you are burdened. But, this is what I'm willing to do to support you. Because if this was reversed, you would do the same for me or other people in the family. So just reiterating, have that conversation and stepping up to the plate. It may take a while, right? We can't just expect for our words to change how someone feels, but connecting him in the community with other people that have gone through these changes. We have early stage support groups, right? Where there are men and women that say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And there's someone in the room that acknowledges how they're feeling and, the expectations they put on themselves. I am going to pass it on to my colleague, Sarah, just to talk about, maybe some grief and other supports in her expert field. So Sarah?
Anne-Marie, that was just so wonderful. And I think the only other piece, the two pieces I really wanted to add is just, I think, Anne-Marie, you're right. It's about grief and loss. It's about people feeling all the things they can't do, and that acknowledging all of the grief that comes with feeling that your identity and your ability is changing. So instead, maybe finding ways to affirm the things your dad can do right now, that the role your dad has in the family, and celebrating those and making those pivotal, so that it isn't just the losses that are being lived out at this moment in his experience, but all the things that he is central in the family, and the ways to celebrate that. Because one of the things we're getting to do with the Alzheimer Society these days is looking at how all of us live life with great moments and with hard moments. That grief is a part of every life, and especially with an illness, a diagnosis like dementia. Grief isn't just something that happens at the end when someone we love passes away. Instead, grief happens every time we encounter a transition or a loss where something changes for us. And so for you and your family and your dad, just, I think, like Anne-Marie so wonderfully put it, just acknowledging that, normalizing that feeling, and offering resources. So it's another one of those opportunities. You can reach out to us. We've got some grief care and supports that we can offer transitionally for you and your dad. But I think I hear so much of what Anne-Marie said, that some of it is just being open and acknowledging that this is there are losses happening, and there are resources available, but to affirm all of the incredible things the person living with dementia in your life does to make to be meaningful in your community, your family, your support system.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and that's what we have. That's kind of been the default that we've been doing, kind of instinctively. No, Dad, you're not a burden. I don't mind driving you to your appointments in the city because you spent many hours driving me around when I was a kid. So those are the kinds of things that we're just acknowledging and trying our best to make him feel like you're not a burden. We are here to help you. We're all in this together, and so thank you very much for that affirmation that kind of what we're doing is on the right track. So thank you.
Marcy. There is a question in the chat. Are there wait lists for dementia long-term care in Alberta? So we like to think of the list kind of at pools, right? So we have an urgent pool. So someone's in crisis, maybe they're living independently, they have no care partners, no one that can support them, or, they're sitting in hospital after surgery, they can't return home, they have no supports. They might go to the top of the pool just because they're more living at risk than maybe someone who has good family support, they're coping well, they have home care coming in or other supports. So when we're looking at long-term care, the wait list will vary depending where you are, right? If you're from Calgary, you may have different options than Edmonton and Central Alberta. Red Deer is the hotspot, but you may have more success rates looking at rural communities like Pinoca or Innisfail or Rimbey, just because they're smaller communities. So the best point when you kind of want to get a timeline or the expectation is to call Alberta Health Services Home Care, the main line, to say, hey, I'm interested in long-term care options. What does that transition look like? Typically, you get to kind of explore where you would like the person you're caring for placed, what type of care or long-term care that they offer, what supports, and you kind of have to make a decision like this is the best place and present that to home care to see if your person's eligible for long-term care in that area, and they will be able to navigate that transition, what that looks like, and then give you an understanding of how long that may take. It could be weeks, it could be a year, it could be 6 months. It really varies on what's happening in the system and what the flow looks like and what target areas you're interested in transitioning into. Juliana?
Hi there. So my dad is, I think, in the early stages, possibly heading towards middle stage. But I wanted to talk to you about things like navigating paranoia and blame. Because essentially so my dad has a diagnosis from a doctor who wasn't able to follow him because he got it from a Parkinson's doctor. And his doctor did put a referral into a geriatric doctor, but that was denied. But now he's essentially saying that kind of everything that's going wrong with his care and my brother's care is due to me and telling me to butt out. So I can't, he's saying I don't have permission to talk to his family doctor about why this referral was denied and try to get him another referral to somebody who could follow him. He won't talk to his doctor about dementia because he doesn't believe he has it. And he's caregiving for my brother, and he's also telling me to butt out of the ability to care for that as well. So I guess how do you like if he has trouble navigating a phone options menu, and that's my fault, for instance. So I guess how do you navigate those kind of situations?
Sarah, do you have any input, or it's up to you? Would you like me to start?
I really want to thank you for sharing that, because I think it's something that happens as part of the disease progression for some people, and very hard for care partners or family members to walk through. So just thank you for sharing that, because I bet it's people have an echo of a common experience in that. And so I think there is the challenge of navigating how the brain is trying to manage memory and experience. And so again, just a great recommendation for those sorts of moments to reach out to your if you have If you've already reached out to the Alzheimer Society and you're a client, to speak with a navigator, get that one-on-one support for the exact situation that you're in is a great help. One of the other services we offer is some support services for you as the care partner, whether or not your father is interested in pursuing that. So just another way for you to have resources. But in this moment, I think there are the navigators would have great resources on how to solve this. Henry, so again, he's living at home in a community. Is that right, Juliana? Yeah.
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 And we can acknowledge that paranoia is a symptom and can be just a reaction to experiencing dementia, right? Not understanding, not having insight. And then all of a sudden, your adult child, your parent, and your adult daughter is telling you what to do and trying to manage your care. And you don't really have that insight. So any one of us in that reverse situation would be a little like, whoa, 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 right? So even Juliana, again, I always like to say, take it first with that conversation, right? And say, hey, dad, even if you don't acknowledge he's having memory concerns, just be like, hey, dad, I acknowledge there's a lot going on. How are you feeling? How can I help you? Right? What do you need help right now? Because maybe it's not dementia related, but maybe he just needs that conversation to build a trust. Because every time we kind of overstep someone with dementia, not that has insight, and we're trying to fix things, we're trying to get the ball rolling, they kind of feel like, there's not that same level of trust because they don't understand. Again, with the paranoia, sometimes there's medications. I don't know if he's on a dementia medication or if he has other borderline healthcare concerns, but I would, have a conversation, see if he's even opening to having a conversation with the family doctor. There are other strategies that we can do. I think, Julianne, just for the sake of time and diving in, I think calling a dementia navigator to really set up a kind of a plan for you of steps that you can follow and to have continuous follow-up with you. I'd recommend you do that as soon as you can. And that will give you better direction. Again, this is just an overview. But if you start with a conversation and then he's like, you know what, Juliana's here to support me, let's go to the doctor together. Don't acknowledge that he has dementia, but maybe memory changes, or talk about brain health. And that might be your way to start building those layers of trust, to start executing different avenues of care. So again, what Sarah said, I totally would recommend as well. And then maybe taking this as a first step to gauge, okay, this is what I need to do to go forward.
And Anne Marie, if I can just jump in, even not to say, Juliana, this will be your dad, but let's say he never wants to engage someone else in the practice. You still have supports, right? And you know that you're doing your best. And so I really want to affirm that, there's supports for you no matter what else is happening. So please do reach out. And I think if that's okay, that goes right to Julinor. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but one of your questions, right? What is a dementia navigator? And we have an incredible dementia navigator on the call. So, and maybe you could pop in with what you do.
Oh, is this the question? Oh, maybe I missed this. Oh, what is a dementia navigator? Okay. So I am a dementia navigator. So what we do, we come from different fields, some from personal experience. Most of us are registered social worker, some may have a rec background, or grief or palliative services, but we come from the social services field, and we help family members, so care partners, or even people living with dementia, navigate the services and navigate their experience with dementia. Whether that's helping with diagnosis, right? Connecting them to home care supports, maybe meal planning, navigating support, helping them connect to a support group or programming in their community. We also do follow-up calls. So, someone makes contact with us, let's say today, there's a standard follow-up in 6 months for one of us to reach out, hey, how you're doing? But they're able to call us anytime for follow-up support. So that's what we're here. Sometimes we're part of people's experience, for a short while. In my years of doing this, I've been with clients that have been with me for 7 years, or been with the society for 7 years that I've had contact with. They come into the office, they're part of programming. So we're the go-to when it comes to navigating, the field of dementia and how the system works and what supports are out there. So I hope that clarifies your question. I did see it. Oh, go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
I was going to say, and then there was another part of your question as well, Juliana, I think. Is that what you were going to?
Yeah. Is it can someone explain what exactly is middle stage versus advanced versus early? Is it early dementia? Yes. Sarah, do you want me to take this one, or what do you feel comfortable with?
Anne-Marie has been working in this field for such a long time as a dementia navigator and a registered social worker. My experience comes from the like you said, like Anne-Marie says, the social services side and in continuing care. And so those different stages have markers along them, but they're different parts of the disease progression, right? And so, Anne-Marie, if you'd be willing to jump in with what those markers are, how better to walk through
Yeah.
those. I think it's not cut and dry, right? It's not like you magically pass from one stage to the stage to the next, but there are
Yeah.
these progressions you see,
Mhm.
and programs and resources we can offer in each of those.
Yeah. So we like to kind of say the progression of dementia is broken up into certain categories of how it could progress. So there's 4 categories. So there's early stage, middle stage, late stage, and end of life. And in each of these progression, we would see a transition of different symptoms that could occur. Doesn't mean all the symptoms are guaranteed, but could possibly occur depending on what happens in that person's life, their medical history, their psychosocial. So we don't like to say it's a exact roadmap because it can change at any point. So in the early stages, we see a certain amount of symptoms, that forgetfulness, there might be a little bit of word finding that happens, but they may have insight. They know something's not quite right, but they're still able to be independent and function on their own, right? And then when we go to the middle stages, there's increased forgetfulness. There's a lot of different more functional changes. They might need supports. And then in the late stage, we see decrease. Maybe communication starts to be harder, right? They may have to be transitioned to care. And then end of life is where we're going to see like our comfort care, palliative care services, more grief supports for the family members. So when we talk about progression, that's what we expect. People think, oh, everyone goes from early, middle, late. But, someone may start in early and then they have a really bad fall, end up having delirium, and, they end up in an accident. They might skip the middle stages and go right to late stage, or they have a heart attack and then all of a sudden they're in, palliative care services. Again, a lot of things can happen, not just dementia. Other things can happen to our health. So it's a guide, not a direct roadmap. If you're interested in more information, message a dementia navigator or check out our Help for Dementia website. There's tons of information that goes more in depth about what those stages of dementia could look like.
And some great tools and ways to help in each stage are on that Help for Dementia website, as well as from our navigators. And if it's okay, before I just wanted to jump back. So when we talked about navigators, there's 2 kinds of other navigators we didn't mention in great detail. And so we have not only the dementia navigators who are part of our client services team who do everyday care, everyday support of care partners and people living with dementia. We also have a new program, our cultural communities navigator. There are team members who are working to build networks and resources for people in different cultural communities. So specifically the South Asian community, but also other cultural communities in which it may be a different way of receiving information or sharing information about things, diseases like dementia, and may need different supports. We also have a rural navigators program that started up for people living in rural areas. And so all of them come with that skill set that Anne-Marie was talking about and can help you in every one of those moments throughout the experience. Sorry for jumping in.
No, perfect. Is it Julinor? Do you have your hand up? Did you have another question?
Yes, I do, but I think there's Maria Powell had a question before me, so maybe answer her question first before I didn't want to butt in.
Sure, let me just find it. Okay. So Maria said, what is your recommendation around safety for a 90-year-old middle stage living on their own in relation to memory concerns, risk of forgetting to turn off a burner, etc.? So so they are living alone. So this, of course, there's always that safety risk, right? And if they're not willing or lack that insight, if they still have capacity, so their personal directive, power of attorney hasn't been signed off, and there's no supportive decision making, it can be hard to say, hey, you got to leave your own home, right? Or how do I do that? So I think the first step, you can ask home care to come in through Alberta Health Services to do a home safety assessment. So they come into the home and they say, okay, do we need safety bars? Do we need raised toilets? How are they navigating the home, their ambulation, their gait? So are they frail, right? Are there risks? And they come and make suggestions to the family members or care partners and the person living with dementia. They're really good at having that conversation to say, okay, maybe even with the supports in our home, this is not a good fit. What does other supports look like? What are the benefits, right? How can we support you? So I think the recommendation, if you're open to having a family conversation or who you're caring for, calling home care, hey, we're just going to do a home assessment. Maybe they want that safety bar or the raised toilet seat, right? Or, they look at the carpet. If the carpet's raised, is there modifications that we can do? And sometimes Alberta Health Services has funding to help make alterations to people's home if they're in a wheelchair, ramps and things like that. So that would be my first suggestion if they're open to that. And then if they're not, again, call a dementia navigator, call our line, and we'll be able to help you. Okay, what are some options for the system, depending on where your location is?
Also be options, even just care partner options with technology you can put in the house and check-in options. There may be, if you have the option to bring in a non-medical companion during the day, and have some safety measures in place about when the stove is turned on and off. So again, like Anne Marie said, reaching out for support to help navigate that particular experience, and the resources available to you are good. But it is always that balance, right, of autonomy, the person's ability and choice, and the safety to keep them well, and the whole family. Um, if it's okay, I also noticed we missed a question from Keith just in the chat. One of our fantastic team members pointed that out. So Keith, you asked, what are the options for activities to fill time with a person in that mid stage, right? Did you want to expand on that at all, or do you just want us to sort of dive in with that?
You could probably just dive in. My spouse is probably mid-stage and has great speech loss, but pretty generally good cognitive. I mean, short-term memory is all shot, but so she can't do the things that she's always loved to do. And even now finding television difficult. Can't differentiate between what's on screen and what's not. But she thinks they're talking to her, and then it stresses her because she enters into the storyline. So it's now she wants to do things, but I'm running out of options. Like I run out of creativity, of things to occupy her time.
No, definitely, Keith. That's hard, that loss of her expectations of things she should be able to do or wants to, and then navigating the safety part of it, right? Like I had a mechanic, loved working with his toolbox, but once his memory started to impact his capabilities, it became a risk of giving him a drill, right? What's going to happen? We do have a guide of 101 things to do with someone living with cognitive impairment or dementia. So definitely you can reach out. We can send that to you. And it has a whole list of creative things that you can mark one off. Getting a companionship. There's a lot of organizations that will have peer-to-peer supports. So taking her on outings, or just even if she's unable to communicate the same way, just having another presence that's not family members stimulates her neurons, right? There's adult day programs as well, right? That are ran from Alberta Health Services has one. Sometimes FCSS has one. Family Catholic Social Services has one. So there's lots of options for that as well to see what's in your area. I'd recommend talking to a dementia navigator. And then there's things like we have fidget blankets, right? We also have a program called Minds in Motion, which focuses on socialization, physical activity, and mental stimulation. So it's a great way. It's normally a 6-week program. You go once a week, you go along with her. So you build community, but she's able to interact with people that are at her cognitive level. And the goal is to give her activities that she can be successful at, whether that's Picturette, Uno, Apple to Apple. I've seen people use dominoes before, right? So there's definitely those options, but I acknowledge, Keith, sometimes the creativity, it's like, what do I do? So these are just some ideas, and you can see what fits for your wife, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And sometimes it's going to be trial and error for a while.
Just circling back, I missed the very beginning there, just had a bit of a challenge getting on, but the navigator would be a source of information for me for that.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
Alzheimer Society, we have dementia navigators and
Yeah.
we support family members. So if you call our main line, they'll direct you to a navigator and you ask your questions and we're able to provide that support and follow up with you if you allow us to.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
Sarah,
I
do you
just
have
want
anything to add?
yeah, I wanted to add like those resources Anne Marie said, those the 101 things to do. It's hard sometimes because we all want to have meaningful activity, right? That doesn't change when a person's living with dementia, but sometimes they need that directive support, right? And it can be tiring as a care partner. You, like you say, you feel like you don't have new or great ideas. So reaching out and getting some of those tools at
Yep.
hand can be so good, and just validating what I'm sure you're already doing, Keith. We have some worksheets around mindfulness that can work both for people living with dementia and care partners. So activities you can do together that are simple, and there's some good weather, we hope really well coming up through all of Alberta. So things like going for a bit of a memory walk. So the person who's walking with you living with dementia is experiencing a great day, and there's some prompts for you to either think of questions for yourself or conversations just to turn it back to what gives meaning and value to you. So again, reach out to that line. The Chris Downey, our fantastic moderator, put it in the chat. I'm sure we'll put it in there again. But just give yourself some grace of all
Yeah.
those meaningful things you do. Again, therapeutic tasks of the things your wife has always loved to do and been part of in the house. Putting out a basket of laundry that needs folding. If she was the person who did this, and that was part of how her routine was through the day, just making those activities available, because again, it's part of that sense of personhood we all have, that we contribute to this household, to this family, to this community. Helps bring everyone some calm. So.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I think we can go back to Julinor before
Yes,
we go back to the
absolutely.
chat.
Thank you. I'm gonna start with a deep breath because I guess it's my father-in-law. And as far as the caregivers, I forget the term you guys used. I feel that because I'm an in-law, I'm more sort of having to hold back a little bit, but I'm also trying to support my husband. So, and I have a type A personality, so it's hard to hold back. And I also have a medical background, which makes it even harder to hold back. So there's guilt feelings and grief feelings. The main difficulty, and I guess based on what you described for the stages, he's 86 and he's probably more into the mid late. The onset was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, but right now he's actually admitted to hospital. And uh, the main scary part is the violence. So he was widowed in around COVID and quickly found a new wife, but she also passed away January 2nd. And he's the type of person who was always told what to do, even to the point of asking permission when to go to bed, kind of thing. And when he's lucid, he would say things like, I just need to find a new wife. So there's sort of the whole uh, guilt feeling that, I wish we could find him a companion. You guys mentioned about companions just to kind of take him out for walks. He's not very intellectual, so even watching hockey and TV overwhelms him now. But the main thing was he has punched other residents. He was in memory care and then got brought to adult inpatient geriatric psychiatry, and then was taken to emerge because of possible infection. So within a span of 17 days of being kind of well, moving around, he's on a bed, kind of skin and bones, and restrained with the hands. So it breaks my heart to see him tied up. It breaks my heart to see him belligerent. It breaks my heart when he tells us to shut up and he doesn't recognize us. He denies having children, and that we are just neighbors. So I love the navigator definition because I feel like I'm lost at sea. So it's my first meeting, and this hospital admission literally just happened 2 nights ago. And so, Emerge docs, nurses super busy, you know, so it's not like you can kind of sit them down and say, what happened? How come within 17 days, I have a video of him walking around to the point that he doesn't know how to go to the bathroom. So like, what is going on? You know, it's just so like acute. You know, so anyway, so that's a lot to share, and I apologize if it's oversharing.
No,
But
that's what this is for.
uh so yeah, like there's the grief, the shame that has to do with, oh my God, if they punched another resident, I would want him kicked out of that facility, you know, that kind of thing. And being in the medical field, punching a care worker, like there's no tolerance. There should be zero tolerance for violence for healthcare workers. And yet I love him, and I keep saying it's the disease, the disease. He's, you know, but it's so hard. Like it's so I don't know what else to do. Short of maybe reaching out here, and maybe there's tips and advice of how I separate and don't kind of put myself in his position, and kind of, yeah. So like seeing your
Yeah.
loved one tied down is pretty rough.
Sarah, I think this is your field to start off with.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd let me jump in just for a minute. I just, again, Julian, I just want to commend everyone who came to this call, because you came because you are trying to manage a very challenging situation. And just coming is a big step, and sharing part of your story or asking a question is just thank you for that, because everyone who was able to do that, there's probably people who are trying to figure out how to frame those questions in their head, or facing their own challenges, and it's keeping you up at night, or it's bringing anxiety. And so just thank you, first of all, Juliana, for saying that. And I think I also want to say there's no magic wand to make any of this perfect or better. Like I just really want to acknowledge that you said, you know, you're from a healthcare background, and that doesn't fix this, because it's about living together and finding the best solutions in each circumstance, right? Um, One of the things that we're starting to offer, it's going to be coming soon, is grief counseling for care partners. And I want to remind you that grief is exactly what you said, Juliana. It's that feeling that there's a loss, there's a change. It's an overwhelming sensation. And so I really do encourage you to reach out. We'll have some licensed counselors and registered therapists. We're able to speak with care partners. And one of the big triggers for grief for care partners of a person living with dementia is those big transition moments, hospitalizations, moving into care. And like you said, those unmet needs translating into behaviors can be really challenging to watch. And our healthcare system being stretched, though, if someone's in a delirium or having to be restrained chemically or physically, it feels impossible for a family. You just feel like you're not meeting the needs. And so just acknowledging for yourself that you're having feelings that you need to care for so you can continue to care for the person that you're supporting is so important. And so that's, you know, so you can obviously find psychosocial and psychological resources for yourself in many places. We're one of your partners, but just recognizing that that might be something for you, because it sounds like your father-in-law is safe in the healthcare system, even though it doesn't feel good. Take this moment to get some care for you. And then, as Anne Marie, I'm sure we'll dive in, you know, there are supports, even when the person you're supporting is in the healthcare system. So whether they're in long-term care or a facility, or they're in a acute care system, there are just some resources and information we can provide that can help you frame what's happening for you right now, and maybe where to go next as the disease progresses or changes, right? So, Anne Marie, I just wanted to
Yeah.
give you a chance to dive into.
Yeah, Julian, I'll tell you a quote that I'm very famous amongst the other dementia navigators for saying, and my clients, or our clients, the society's clients, is you can never do more than your best. No one can ask you to do more than your best, given the situation, guaranteed the knowledge that you know. And I know you said you feel lost at sea. Well, we're here to give you kind of like a safe place, right? Like just to kind of cope with all the changes. It's not to get over it. We don't get over dementia. We talk about coping with the experience of dementia as a care partner. And I want to acknowledge that you even talked about the boundary that you're trying to navigate with being an in-law, right? And supporting your spouse, right? And your partner, and you're in healthcare. So you see these things that maybe everyone doesn't see, and you want to fix it, because that's what we do with healthcare. We want to fix it, right? So I think even talking to other care partners through a support group, so we have online support groups and in person, depending on your location, to ask what did other care partners do that were in a similar situation? Because this is quite common, what you explained, Julianor. It's not uncommon that these situations happened. And then I want to touch on about navigating the healthcare system. Like you said, it could be something acute. We don't know. We can't give that information because we're not assessing him. But there's a lot of reasons that can contribute to cognitive impairment and increased decline. Urinary tract infections that go undiagnosed, right? Delirium, right? Psychosis can happen. Changes in meds. So if someone's not compliant with their meds, maybe they take it, but then they spit it out later. So we're going to see some other mental changes if they're not compliant with their medication. So going back to the healthcare providers and be like, hey, what do you need from me so I can help you? Let's help each other. We're a team. Can we do an investigation? It's hard breaching those conversations because we see everyone being busy, but it's also our role, right, as a care partner to advocate and push a little bit. So don't feel bad for pushing. But definitely, like Sarah said, I think that grief part, reaching out to our supports, getting that started so that you can better cope as changes start to continue. Because maybe this is the new normal, his expressions of unmet needs, right? This may continue, and you want to have the best tools in your toolkit for you and your family to cope with those changes. So I hope this gave you a little more understanding and insight and support.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Making sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. Sarah, do you notice any questions we missed?
There was just some great resources that people named. So again, when we were thinking about someone living in the community, what resources can you provide to sort of surround them with support? So there's technical resources like something was mentioned is telecare provides, cook stops for the stove, so it only can turn on at certain times. And one of you recommended, just a life alert button that could ring over to a care partner, right? And so I think a lot of this is thinking creatively with the solutions that are out there in the community. Some will work for you and some won't be the right fit for you and the person that you're supporting. But there are resources available. Oh, and that's wonderful. Just an outreach to one of the support programs that Anne Marie was mentioning. They're really incredible. And they're really well facilitated just from someone who's just stepped into watching our team. They do an incredible job. So do encourage you to do that. But Chris has just, I think, shared a question that we've received from the internal chat. If someone's developing aggression due to dementia, will they still be accepted into long-term care? And you sort of touched on that, didn't you, Julianor? And that is part for some people in the expression of trying to, those unmet needs, again, that Anne Marie was saying. And so that in and of itself does not preclude someone from receiving care in our system. And it may be that there are additional supports needed. You mentioned the geriatric team who does psychological assessments and can provide some extra support. There's specialized facilities, especially if you're in one of the two or the larger urban hubs, that can provide some additional support, helping transition people to appropriate medication or patterns to help them with their with meeting their needs and meeting care partner needs to create a safe environment for them and for others. But it is part of how we can support one another. So in and of itself, that wouldn't prevent someone from receiving care. Anne Marie, but you probably have a lot more to add.
You're doing a great job. Same thing, Sarah. I think one of the things as care partners that approach navigators or come to our society ask, well, how do I advocate when it comes to unmet needs? What are you talking about? So terms like aggression, agitation, they're being mean, they're violent. We like to say unmet needs because what I like to say, there's no response without a catalyst, right? People with dementia can't communicate the way that you and I and the rest of our communicating. So sometimes the way they communicate is by expressing themselves in their immediate reaction. And sometimes that comes off quite negative. So they're frustrated. So what's the difference between being frustrated and angry? It may look the same to one person, but it may look different. I have a younger sibling. When she's frustrated, she cries and runs away. Someone may think she's sad, but she's actually frustrated. So it does take an investigation on our end to find out what is the person I'm caring for need. Like I said, the UTI, right? Okay, that would show maybe an expression or unmet need or reaction, right? Pain is one thing that these specialty like clinics may try to find out. Are they experiencing pain that they themselves cannot identify, right? Are they having, a lot of times it's GI problems, so stomach problems can occur, incontinence, right? So there's lots of different factors that we can see. I was working with a family where the person would, this was a person that never used to cuss, never used to swear, and all of a sudden in care, they were ramming into the staff and swearing. Well, their brain kind of, people with dementia can still be creative in communicating. So what this person knew is that if he swore, he would get everyone to look at him. So it's a way to grab attention. Really, all he needed was that he was thirsty and he was cold. So now the staff learned after investigating that every time he swore or every time that he was ramming in, he needed something, and they would test out, was he thirsty? Was he cold? Was he hungry? Was he in pain? So it does take a team. It takes creativity investigating. Again, us as dementia navigators and the Alzheimer Society, we're here to help you navigate and come up with ideas to give those care home staff, your medical professionals, ideas when it comes to investigating. So I just wanted to express that could be a consideration when we're talking about unmet needs.
I'm just going to dive in on that because that's such a good point, Anne-Marie. Our approach changes how anyone interacts with us, right? And of course, that's the same with someone living with dementia. And so finding the routines and rhythms that help prepare us all for the best encounters we can have can be really helpful, right? So whether it is having that, that your person loves to drink hot water with lemon. And so having that available whenever you see the agitation or behaviors start to change, whether it's, they have a favorite pillow and a sheet that they like to sleep with because it's the right texture and sensation for them. So you, as the care partners, have a much broader and more in-depth insight to your person. So you're going to bring a wealth of knowledge to your team. And your team could be home care, like Anne-Marie says, if you're in the community, it could be care partners, it could be companions, it could be the staff at a professional care facility. So it could be acute care and helping them hear what's meaningful in this moment with the resources that are available. So.
We did have a question that came in. Would some of the early signs be ranting about things and being angry? I think I understand this question. The person who asked this question, if you're comfortable just elaborating so we can be really direct in how we answer, just about the ranting and being angry in the early signs. So I can go based off assumptions. So I'm assuming this question means, is ranting and being angry a symptom of that, or can occur in the early stages of dementia? And I think to answer, if you don't mind me going, Sarah, first, is like, yes, right? They're trying to navigate their emotions, right? They may have an insight previously before anyone else noticed, but stigma and fear can stop that person from sharing even with their closest family members, a spouse, an adult child, a close friend. So we need to take that into consideration. They may be at the point where maybe they have some insight or lack insight completely. So they're trying to navigate their emotions of frustration, confusion, fear, right? What does the future hold? What do I do, right? Sense of loss and grief, like Sarah touched upon. So they may be angry, and a lot of times they're not angry at their care partners. They're frustrated and angry at the situation, and that maybe people can't understand them anymore or really empathize with their feelings because we're so focused on fixing the things around us. So I think, again, I always say a conversation goes a long way if you can. And first acknowledging their feelings, being like, yeah, this is horrible. This happened to you. They took away your license. How dare they? Even though it's for safety reasons, again, you want to acknowledge the person you're caring for because the way they're experiencing reality is different than ours, right? We know why their driver's license got taken away because it was safe. It was unsafe for them to drive. They don't understand that. So how do we tell someone that doesn't have their understanding why they can't drive anymore? First, we need to acknowledge this is frustrating for you. I understand. Oh, that's so hard, you know. What can we do to support you, right? Maybe you go on car rides with them in the passenger seat if they just liked going out. We find creative ways to stimulate their losses or give them an outling, right? Maybe we fill that day with something else or get some driving supports for them. There's tons of different options, but I think acknowledging their feelings, right? And saying, you know, acknowledging, hey, this actually sucks. Crying with them, get angry with them, have a yelling, screaming it out, right? There's lots of different options to get those emotions out. And you may have to continuously do that for a while, and that's okay. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was really reflecting on this, and thanks again, Kathy, for raising this. I want to share my mother-in-law when she was starting to have early stage, it being the early stages of dementia. She was the sweetest lady, it absolutely all the time, and with her sons too. She wouldn't express any concerns or frustrations. Her daughters, she would be more open with because she had that different relationship, and so they would get more of the frustration moments than other people. And so it may be that your person is ranting and being angry with you because you're a person they trust. You're a person they see as part of the world from when they understood it in a different way. And so it just affirming again that this may be you're the person that they trust to be frustrated with. And so just taking that and acknowledging it, and as Anne Marie said, it it may be that they're at the stage with their dementia where something has happened and they can't understand what's changed, and so their brain's making a pathway. We used the word paranoia was shared before, right? That's one of the can be part of the dementia experience. And so that person is living within that confusion of something not making sense to them. And so I think, as Anne Marie said, just being present with them in their reality, affirming their emotion, and then it may be that you try to problem solve the situation. It may be you redirect to something else. But naming and validating the emotion is so important because that person is really living within that. Um, Dementia is an age-related change, but there are age-related memory changes, right? And so I think losses happen to all of us at different stages in our life, right? But when we feel like it's just loss after loss after loss, it can be very overwhelming. And so just allowing ourselves to be human within that, especially if you're the person, the trusted person that this someone is reaching out to, just by being honest with their emotion is really important. So again, thank you for that question.
Just checking. I did get a question just directly. Is there any funding for care partners, tax credits? What about financial support for products like incontinence briefs? So again, you know, being a care partner, we're not all millionaires unless someone's secretly a million on here. Good for you. It can be expensive, right? We're all trying to make it out here. And as a person you're caring for may need more items, right? You're trying to say how we're going to afford care. What happens to the house if I have to live separately from my spouse? So yes, there are certain funding for people living with dementia with a diagnosis or even memory changes. Like I said, Alberta Health Services Home Care, that's a free service. We already pay for it for our taxes, so you might as well use it. That's the secret. Whether that's in-home supports, right? Whether that's respite care, you need a break, someone to spend time with the person you're caring for so you can go grocery shopping and get your hair done or just scream in your car because you're so exhausted, or attend one of our support programs, right? There isn't something called involuntary separation. So once your person has gone into care, you are now eligible for that credit. So it's a tax break, really. It's through the CRI, so there's paperwork to fill out. And if you go on through Alberta Health websites and look up financial supports or senior benefit programs, it clearly indicates what those thresholds are, how much the credits are, what does that look like. And then also when you're transitioning into care, most likely the transition coordinator, whether that's through hospital or through an actual care home, whether it's long-term care or supportive living, typically there's a transition coordinator or social worker that could apply for extra funding that either you or the person you're caring for is eligible. So there are financial supports. You have to look for them. So again, if you want to know directly, please call our main line for a dementia navigator. It's based off location. Sometimes small communities have grants. So the community comes together and say, hey, this person can't afford this level of care. We don't want to move them. I've seen communities come together and give funding to families to make sure they had meals prepared because no one could cook anymore in the house. Incontinence products, you know, making sure maybe meds that weren't covered could be meds, right? Med provided. So there's lots of options. You do have to look and navigate for them, and we can support you in doing that.
And I just wanted to jump in to say one of the resources that I even access is if you're employed by a company that has employment benefits, one of the options is you mentioned incontinence products, right? And sometimes that's covered through your personal insurance, so it's something to look into. But one of the things we're looking at with providing palliative approach supports to our community of clients is to consider those early resources you can put in place. And part of that is surrounding yourself with the community. And so exactly like Anne-Marie says, it may be that there are people in your community who are your friends and family who want to help. And so maybe it's about asking those people who already have incredible skill sets or are part of your support system who keep saying, how can I help? How can I help? You know what I'd love is could you make me a frozen meal once a month? So I have that to pull out to put in my to make an easy meal for myself or my partner, all of those people who could provide an extra walk around the neighborhood with you or the person with dementia. I think sometimes we feel really isolated when we're a care partner, but it really is about, like Anne-Marie said, being creative, thinking about the resources you have, and finding someone to talk that through. So whether that's a family friend or reaching out to one of the dementia navigators to sort of talk through your situation, just remember you're not alone in this. And I bet you're doing a better job than you feel like you are some days. And so asking these questions is such a great step.
We have time for one more question. If anyone has a question to finish this out with. Thank you both. You've answered, you guys brought great questions and your answers have been wonderful, really thorough. And if there isn't more questions, we've put the information in the chat and I can pop it in there one more time, but you're welcome to reach out to the Alzheimer Society anytime for more information, or like Anne-Marie and Sarah suggested, to talk with the navigator and get some help, navigating this process. It can be a really arduous process some days. We appreciate everyone coming out tonight and taking time out of your evening to join us. Hope you all have a really great night.
Thank you
Take
all.
care, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.